All right, today we are jumping into one of the most action-packed and pivotal chapters in the whole Bible, Genesis 11. I mean, it's a story that has everything: ambition, judgment, and this incredible turn that really sets the table for the entire story of salvation. Let's get into it and see how humanity's biggest power play was answered by one of God's biggest promises. So the chapter kicks off with this wild statement. Just try to picture it for a second. A whole world with zero language barriers. Everyone speaking the same language, understanding each other perfectly. After the flood, this was humanity's big reset. One people, one culture, one voice. It sounds like perfect unity, right? But what we're about to see is that unity, when it's not centered on God, can go wrong fast. Okay, so this totally unified world, they all travel together and settle down in one spot, the land of Shinar. And with all their brain power and manpower combined, they come up with a single massive project. And this is where the story really takes a turn, because this huge project they dreamed up, it wasn't about survival. It wasn't about worshiping God. Nope. It was a monument to themselves, a tower literally built on a foundation of pure pride. Their plan was, you gotta admit, pretty ambitious. It had 4 basic steps. First, innovation. They figure out how to make their own bricks instead of just using stone. Pretty smart. Then consolidation. Let's build a huge city to keep everyone together, to centralize our power. That leads to the big one, the aspiration. A tower so tall it reaches the heavens. But all of that was just a means to an end. The real goal, to make a name for themselves. This one verse right here is the key to everything. You've got to notice the 2 things they're after. First, let us make us a name. This is all about self-glory, right? It's about wanting to be famous and important completely apart from God. And second, lest we be scattered. This isn't just a preference, this is direct, willful disobedience to God's command. And right here, you see the conflict laid out plain as day. God's command to Noah's family was crystal clear. Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. His plan was for them to spread out. Man's plan was the polar opposite. Let's all huddle together in one place and let's make a name for ourselves, not for him. It's a total clash of agendas. So, humanity was completely united in its rebellion. But here's the thing, they weren't the ones in charge. God saw their pride, he saw where this was headed, and he prepared to step in. You know, there's a real sense of divine irony here. They're trying to build this tower all the way up to the heavens. And yet the scripture says God had to come down just to get a good look at it. It just perfectly shows the massive gap between God's perspective and ours. This is the moment of inspection, right before the verdict comes down. Now this is God's assessment, and it's so profound. He sees that their unity, when it's fueled by pride, is actually terrifying. With one mind and one language, humanity's ability to dream up arrogant, sinful stuff would be totally unchecked. So God's intervention isn't him being threatened. It's an act of mercy to protect us from ourselves. And here it is, the judgment. It's fast, it's precise, and it changes human history forever. The very tool they were using for their rebellion, their one language, becomes the very instrument of their division. The project just grinds to a halt. Can you imagine the chaos? One minute you're yelling for a brick, the next minute the guy next to you is speaking a totally different language. It's all over. So they stop building. And the city gets a name that serves as a permanent reminder of what happened: Babel. It literally comes from the Hebrew word for confused. Think about that. The monument they wanted to build to their own name and their own unity became a monument to their confusion and judgment. God, and this is so important, the story doesn't end in judgment, not even close. Right on the heels of this massive scattering, God kicks off his rescue plan. The camera of the biblical narrative zooms out from all the nations of the world and then zooms right in on one single man, Abram. This is absolutely key. The genealogy that comes right after the Tower of Babel story, it can be tempting to just kind of skim through it, right? But don't. It's not just a boring list of names. It is the bridge that God builds out of the wreckage of Babel. It's the path that leads straight from humanity's spectacular failure to God's sovereign choice of one person. You can see it here. The text carefully, deliberately traces this one chosen line from Shem, one of Noah's faithful sons, all the way down through the generations. This is not random at all. It's like a golden thread that God is pulling through history, leading directly to the man he has chosen for his plan. And here's where we land. Abram. He is God's answer to Babel. Through this one man and his descendants, God is going to start a brand new story. He's going to create a people for himself, he's going to establish a covenant promise, and eventually, he's going to bring blessing to all those scattered nations of the earth. So we're left with this really powerful, dramatic contrast. At Babel, humanity tried to make a name for themselves, and it was a complete disaster. But just one chapter later, God comes to Abram and promises him, "I will make your name great." Do you see that incredible pivot? It reveals that God's plan was never to just abandon us in our mess and confusion. His plan was always to redeem us, not through a massive human project, but through a chosen person, a specific promise, and a divine purpose that could never, ever be stopped.